Meditation affects our lives. The cleaning up process, the purification process I have talked about, takes place in the mind. But you will also find you need to remove some old debris that has accumulated in the body because of our psychological responses. Imagine a person has been living in a room for the past 20 or 30 years and has never bothered to clean it. All the leftover food, all the dirty clothes, all the rubbish that's accumulated now reaches up to the ceiling. Trying to live among that rubbish is extremely unpleasant. But the room's inhabitant doesn't even notice it, until one day a friend comes along and says, "Why don't you clean up?" So together they clean up a little corner. Then our imaginary person finds that it's far more comfortable and easy to live in that clean corner. Now they start to clean out the whole room until eventually they can look out of the windows and get a better view and also find room enough to move. Feeling more comfortable, the person can use the mind freely without having to attend to any bodily discomfort.
The house we live in is our body. It doesn't matter how many times we move from town to country, from apartment to home, from home to a room, or even from one country to another. We take this body with us until it completely deteriorates, decays, and becomes a heap of bones, and then only dust. Until that happens, we carry it along with us wherever we move. It's this house that we need to make a little more spacious and at ease. The psychological accumulation of obstructions and blockages has been deposited by our emotional responses. Mind has put them there, so mind can also remove them. In our meditative procedure, this means knowing the feeling, not reacting, then letting go of it.
As its second feature, the meditation practice incorporates non-reaction. This is a most important aspect of reaching peace and harmony within ourselves, otherwise our reactions will always be wave motions that overwhelm us, and we'll never see the path clearly. It will remain obscure to us. We may hear about it. We may have an inkling what is meant, but we'll never see it ourselves because seeing is, in seeing, the inner vision. This inner vision is obstructed by reactions, our emotional responses. When we observe feelings and sensations during meditation, there's no need, and usually no inclination, to react. So it is possible to abstain from
reacting. We're actually doing just that. We can take that non-reaction into daily life with us. Whatever emotion turns up, we can see it as just a feeling that has arisen and that will pass away. If we learn this from our meditation practice, we're learning one of the most valuable lessons on how to handle ourselves. It's a common misconception that because we're alive we know how to live. This is one of our human absurdities. Living life is a skill, and most people take a headlong fall at least once or twice in their lives. They call it a tragedy or my problem. It's just that the skill hasn't been perfected.
The third but equally important aspect of our meditation practice is the personal experience of impermanence. Unless we know it personally, impermanence is going to remain a word only. Words alone can never liberate. The experience is needed. The Buddha's path aims at liberation, complete and total freedom, and this has to be a personal experience. In meditation, the experience of impermanence is quite direct. When you attend to your breath, you know that this breath went in and then it went out. It's not the same breath anymore. The feeling arises and already it's gone. Then there's a feeling in another spot, such an assortment of feelings and sensations, and then there are none left. A pain in the leg, it's moved, it's gone. Feelings come and feelings go. With a little more meditation skill, the impermanence of feeling is easily seen, but we also gain insight into the impermanence of this body of ours. Everybody knows about that. There's no thinking person in the whole world who doesn't know that his or her body and all other bodies are impermanent.
Yet we all live as if we were permanent and grieve about those bodies that have already submitted to the law of nature, as if it were something unexpected. This is obviously faulty thinking and doesn't make much sense, does it? It's due to the fact that we close our vision to the realities. We try to look at that which is pleasant. That we are also constantly confronted with the unpleasant is a fact for which we try to blame someone else. Some people go as far as blaming the devil. It doesn't really matter who one blames, whether one's neighbor or the devil. The reality of life is total impermanence, and we have to accept and experience it in order to live accordingly. When we learn to penetrate more deeply, we'll become aware that there is constant movement in every cell of the body. We all learned this law of nature in school. We might have been 11 or 12 at the time when we were told that all the cells in the body are renewed every 7 years. I distinctly remember trying to figure out whether every cell of the body was going to fall out after 7 years and whether I'd get a new lot coming back in. Since that didn't seem feasible, I gave up on it. I couldn't figure it out. Now we can understand what is really happening. It means that after 7 years all the cells will have deteriorated and been renewed, a constant movement. Obviously there must be a way of becoming aware of this. With meditative concentration we can become aware of the movement of the skin and under the skin. Then we will have a different outlook on ourselves and on the rest of the world, because now we know with direct knowledge that there is nothing solid or static, least of all this body. Scientists have proved that there is no single, solid building block in the whole of the universe. Everything in existence is made up of energy particles, which move so quickly, coming together and falling apart, that they create the illusion of solidity. The Buddha said the same 2,500 years ago when he referred to such particles, but he didn't need a laboratory to test and prove it. He experienced it himself. This resulted in his enlightenment. Our scientists know all about it, but I dare say they haven't become enlightened. What they must have missed is the personal experience.
We can know for ourselves that there's nothing solid anywhere. Even logic, just plain, intellectual logic, proves that if there were anything solid or static, there couldn't be a human being, there'd be a corpse. But that's just intellectualizing, which isn't enough. It has to be felt. When it's felt in the meditative experience, then one knows. What one knows from experience, nobody can dispute. Even if everybody in the world were to say to you, no, this isn't so. Why don't you think you're solid? Why don't you touch the body? It is solid, isn't it? You wouldn't want to argue or be swayed. When people dispute what the Buddha was teaching, he didn't argue. He wasn't defending a viewpoint. He was talking about his own experience. With greater concentration and deeper penetration we will notice constant movement in ourselves. The mind realizes that if there's constant movement inside, it must be outside too, so where can any solidity be found? The mind may say, if there's constant movement, where is the I? The feelings have all changed. None are left of a moment ago. The body is moving. There isn't anything I can hang on to. The thoughts are moving, so where am I? Then, of course, people do find some imaginary possibilities where they can find themselves, such as in a higher self, an essence, a soul, and so on. But investigated a little further, it too is shown to be
another illusion. Impermanence has to be experienced. Another aspect of our practice is one of the meditation techniques the Buddha mentions in the Discourse on the Foundations of Mindfulness, the meditation on the 4 elements, earth, water, fire, and air. That feeling of solidity in the body is the earth element. We can also feel the solidity of the meditation cushions we're sitting on. The earth element is everywhere. The earth element is also in water, otherwise we couldn't swim in it or propel a boat over it. The earth element is also in the air. Otherwise birds couldn't fly and neither could an airplane. The fire element, temperature, is in everything too. We can feel it in ourselves if our attention is directed to it. Usually we're only aware of the fire element when we're freezing cold, or very hot, or think we've got a fever. But temperature is always there. It's in every living being and in all matter.
The water element in us can be felt in the blood, in the saliva, in the urine. The water element is also the binding force. When you have flour and you want to make dough, you have to add water to keep it together. Water is the binding element to be found in everything. Without it, all those constantly moving cells would fall apart. There wouldn't be anybody sitting here if we didn't have that binding element to hold us together. All this is very interesting, isn't it? But it's useless unless it's experienced. Until then, it's just another intellectual pastime that one may discuss with friends. Yet, when it is experienced, it becomes an inner vision of how things really are. Knowledge and vision of things, as they really are, is a description frequently used by the Buddha.
We can add space as the fifth element. There are spaces, openings, inside us, in the mouth or in the nose. The interior of the body has open spaces. The universe is space. If we realize this in ourselves and connect to the fact that sameness is found everywhere, we will lose some of our separation technique. This is me and I'm going to look after me, the rest of the world may get on as best it can. May the rest of them live long and happily, but don't let them come too near. When we realize that we're nothing but energy particles coming together and falling apart, nothing but the five elements, then what is the me we are so zealously protecting? And what is the rest of the world that seems so threatening? Meditation is aimed at insight. Insight is the goal of Buddhist meditation. The techniques are the tools. You use them in the best possible way. Everybody uses tools a little differently. The more skillful we become with them, the quicker and easier the results will be. But full attention must be on the use of the tool, not the result. Only then will the skill and the ease develop.